Jehovah's Witnesses is a millenarian restorationist Christian denomination with non-Trinitarian beliefs distinct from mainstream Christianity. The group claims a worldwide membership of more than 8.2 million adherents involved in evangelism, convention attendance figures of more than 15 million, and an annual memorial attendance of more than 19.9 million. Jehovah's Witnesses are directed by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, a group of elders in Brooklyn, New York, which establishes all doctrines based on its interpretations of the Bible. They prefer to use their own translation, the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures, although their literature occasionally quotes and cites other translations. They believe that the destruction of the present world system at Armageddon is imminent, and that the establishment of God's kingdom over the earth is the only solution for all problems faced by humanity. The group emerged from the Bible student movement, founded in the late 1870s by Charles Taze Russell with the formation of Zion's Watchtower Tract Society, with significant organizational and doctrinal changes under the leadership of Joseph Franklin Rutherford. The name Jehovah's Witnesses was adopted in 1931 to distinguish themselves from other Bible student groups and symbolize a break with the legacy of Russell's traditions. Jehovah's Witnesses are best known for their door-to-door preaching, distributing literature such as The Watchtower and Awake, and refusing military service and blood transfusions. They consider use of the name Jehovah vital for proper worship. They reject Trinitarianism, inherent immortality of the soul, and hellfire, which they consider to be unscriptural doctrines. They do not observe Christmas, Easter, birthdays, or other holidays and customs they consider to have pagan origins incompatible with Christianity. Adherents commonly refer to their body of beliefs as the truth, and consider themselves to be in the truth. They consider secular society to be morally corrupt and under the influence of Satan, and most limit their social interaction with non-witnesses. Congregational disciplinary actions include disfellowshipping, their term for formal expulsion, and shunning. Baptized individuals who formally leave are considered disassociated and are also shunned. Disfellowshipped and disassociated individuals may eventually be reinstated if deemed repentant. The religion's position regarding conscientious objection to military service and refusal to salute national flags has brought it into conflict with some governments. Consequently, some Jehovah's Witnesses have been persecuted and their activities are banned or restricted in some countries. Persistent legal challenges by Jehovah's Witnesses have influenced legislation related to civil rights in several countries. The organization has attracted criticism over issues surrounding biblical translation, doctrines, handling of sexual abuse cases, and alleged coercion of its members. The claims are rejected by the religion's leaders, and some have been disputed by courts and religious scholars. History. Background: in 1870, Charles Taze Russell and others formed a group in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to study the Bible. During the course of his ministry, Russell disputed many beliefs of mainstream Christianity, including immortality of the soul, hellfire, predestination, the fleshly return of Jesus Christ, the Trinity, and the burning up of the world. In 1876, Russell met Nelson H. Barber. Later that year they jointly produced the book Three Worlds, which combined restitutionist views with end-time prophecy. The book taught that God's dealings with humanity were divided dispensationally, each ending with a harvest, that Christ had returned as an invisible spirit being in 1874, inaugurating the harvest of the gospel age, and that 1914 would mark the end of a 2,520-year period called the Gentile Times, at which time world society would be replaced by the full establishment of God's kingdom on earth. Beginning in 1878, Russell and Barber jointly edited a religious journal, Herald of the Morning. In June 1879 the two split over doctrinal differences, and in July, Russell began publishing the magazines Zion's Watchtower and Herald of Christ's Presence. stating that its purpose was to demonstrate that the world was in the last days, and that a new age of earthly and human restitution under the reign of Christ was imminent. From 1879, Watchtower supporters gathered as autonomous congregations to study the Bible topically. 30 congregations were founded, and during 1879 and 1880, Russell visited each to provide the format he recommended for conducting meetings. As congregations continued to form during Russell's ministry, they each remained self-administrative, functioning under the Congregationalist style of church governance. In 1881, Zion's Watchtower Tract Society was presided over by William Henry Conley, and in 1884, Charles Taze Russell incorporated the society as a non-profit business to distribute tracts and Bibles. By about 1900, Russell had organized thousands of part- and full-time colporteurs, and was appointing foreign missionaries and establishing branch offices. By the 1910s, Russell's organization maintained nearly 100 pilgrims, or traveling preachers. Russell engaged in significant global publishing efforts during his ministry, and by 1912, he was the most distributed Christian author in the United States. Russell moved the Watchtower Society's headquarters to Brooklyn, New York, in 1909, combining printing and corporate offices with a house of worship. Volunteers were housed in a nearby residence he named Bethel. He identified the religious movement as Bible Students, and more formally as the International Bible Students Association. By 1910, about 50,000 people worldwide were associated with the movement, and congregations re-elected him annually as their pastor. Russell died October 31, 1916, at the age of 64 while returning from a ministerial speaking tour. Reorganization. In January 1917, the Watchtower Society's legal representative, Joseph Franklin Rutherford, was elected as its next president. His election was disputed, and members of the board of directors accused him of acting in an autocratic and secretive manner. The divisions between his supporters and opponents triggered a major turnover of members over the next decade. In June 1917, he released The Finished Mystery as a seventh volume of Russell's Studies in the Scriptures series. The book, published as the posthumous work of Russell, was a compilation of his commentaries on the Bible books of Ezekiel and Revelation, plus numerous editions by Bible students Clayton Woodworth and George Fisher. It strongly criticized Catholic and Protestant clergy and Christian involvement in the Great War. As a result, Watchtower Society directors were jailed for sedition under the Espionage Act in 1918, and members were subjected to mob violence. Charges against the directors were dropped in 1920. Rutherford centralized organizational control of the Watchtower Society. In 1919, he instituted the appointment of a director in each congregation, and a year later all members were instructed to report their weekly preaching activity to the Brooklyn headquarters. At an international convention held at Cedar Point, Ohio, in September 1922, a new emphasis was made on house-to-house preaching. Significant changes in doctrine and administration were regularly introduced during Rutherford's 25 years as president, including the 1920 announcement that the Jewish patriarchs would be resurrected in 1925, marking the beginning of Christ's 1,000-year kingdom. Disappointed by the changes, tens of thousands of defections occurred during the first half of Rutherford's tenure, leading to the formation of several Bible student organizations independent of the Watchtower Society, most of which still exist. By mid-1919, as many as 1 in 7 of Russell-era Bible students had ceased their association with the society, and as many as 2/3 by the end of the 1920s. On July 26, 1931, at a convention in Columbus, Ohio, Rutherford introduced the new name of Jehovah's Witnesses, based on Isaiah chapter 43 verse 10. "Ye are my witnesses, saith Jehovah, and my servant whom I have chosen," which was adopted by resolution. The name was chosen to distinguish his group of Bible students from other independent groups that had severed ties with the society, as well as symbolize the instigation of new outlooks and the promotion of fresh evangelizing methods. In 1932, Rutherford eliminated the system of locally elected elders and in 1938, introduced what he called a theocratic organizational system, under which appointments in congregations worldwide were made from the Brooklyn headquarters. From 1932, it was taught that the little flock of 144,000 would not be the only people to survive Armageddon. Rutherford explained that in addition to the 144,000 anointed, who would be resurrected, or transferred at death to live in heaven to rule over earth with Christ, a separate class of members, the great multitude, would live in a paradise restored on earth. From 1935, new converts to the movement were considered part of that class. By the mid-1930s, the timing of the beginning of Christ's presence, his enthronement as king, and the start of the last days, were each moved to 1914. As their interpretations of the Bible developed, witness publications decreed that saluting national flags is a form of idolatry, which led to a new outbreak of mob violence and government opposition in the United States, Canada, Germany, and other countries. Worldwide membership of Jehovah's Witnesses reached 113,624 in 5,323 congregations by the time of Rutherford's death in January 1942. Continued development. Nathan Orr was appointed as third president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society in 1942. Orr commissioned a new translation of the Bible, the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures, the full version of which was released in 1961. He organized large international assemblies, instituted new training programs for members, and expanded missionary activity and branch offices throughout the world. Orr's presidency was also marked by an increasing use of explicit instructions guiding witnesses in their lifestyle and conduct, and a greater use of congregational judicial procedures to enforce a strict moral code. From 1966, witness publications and convention talks built anticipation of the possibility that Christ's 1,000-year reign might begin in late 1975 or shortly thereafter. The number of baptisms increased significantly, from about 59,000 in 1966 to more than 297,000 in 1974. By 1975, the number of active members exceeded 2 million. Membership declined during the late 1970s after expectations for 1975 were proved wrong. Watchtower Society literature did not state dogmatically that 1975 would definitely mark the end, but in 1980 the Watchtower Society admitted its responsibility in building up hope regarding that year. The offices of elder and ministerial servant were restored to witness congregations in 1972, with appointments made from headquarters. It was announced that, starting in September 2014, appointments would be made by traveling overseers. In a major organizational overhaul in 1976, the power of the Watchtower Society president was diminished, with authority for doctrinal and organizational decisions passed to the governing body. Since Orr's death in 1977, the position of president has been occupied by Frederick Franz and Milton Henschel, both members of the governing body, and since 2000 by Don A. Adams, not a member of the governing body. In 1995, Jehovah's Witnesses abandoned the idea that Armageddon must occur during the lives of the generation that was alive in 1914, and in 2013 changed their teaching on the generation. Organization. Jehovah's Witnesses are organized hierarchically, in what the leadership calls a theocratic organization, reflecting their belief that it is God's visible organization on earth. The organization is led by the governing body, an all-male group that varies in size, but since early 2014 has comprised 7 members. all of whom profess to be of the anointed class with a hope of heavenly life, based in the Watchtower Society's Brooklyn headquarters. There is no election for membership. New members are selected by the existing body. Until late 2012, the governing body described itself as the representative and spokesman for God's faithful and discreet slave class. At the 2012 annual meeting of the Watchtower Society, the faithful and discreet slave was defined as referring to the governing body only. The governing body directs several committees that are responsible for administrative functions, including publishing, assembly programs and evangelizing activities. It appoints all branch committee members and traveling overseers, after they have been recommended by local branches, with traveling overseers supervising circuits of congregations within their jurisdictions. Traveling overseers appoint local elders and ministerial servants. And while branch offices may appoint regional committees for matters such as Kingdom Hall construction or disaster relief, each congregation has a body of appointed unpaid male elders and ministerial servants. Elders maintain general responsibility for congregational governance, setting meeting times, selecting speakers and conducting meetings, directing the public preaching work, and creating judicial committees to investigate and decide disciplinary action for cases involving sexual misconduct or doctrinal breaches. New elders are appointed by a traveling overseer after recommendation by the existing body of elders. Ministerial servants, appointed in a similar manner to elders, fulfill clerical and attendant duties, but may also teach and conduct meetings. Witnesses do not use elder as a title to signify a formal clergy-laity division, though elders may employ ecclesiastical privilege such as confession of sins. Baptism is a requirement for being considered a member of Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses do not practice infant baptism, and previous baptisms performed by other denominations are not considered valid. Individuals undergoing baptism must affirm publicly that dedication and baptism identify them as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in association with God's Spirit-directed organization, though witness publications say baptism symbolizes personal dedication to God and not to a man, work or organization. Their literature emphasizes the need for members to be obedient and loyal to Jehovah and to his organization, stating that individuals must remain part of it to receive God's favor and to survive Armageddon. Publishing: the organization publishes a significant amount of literature as part of its evangelism activities. The Watchtower Society has produced over 200 million copies of the Bible in over 100 languages. The Watchtower and Awake are the most widely distributed magazines in the world. Translation of witness publications is done by over 2,000 volunteers worldwide, producing literature in over 760 languages. Funding: much of their funding is provided by donations, primarily from members. There is no tithing or collection. In 2001, Newsday listed the Watchtower Society as one of New York's 40 richest corporations, with revenues exceeding $950 million.